Hello, everyone. Today we are talking about a very narrow subject, just a particular point of interest that I, in particular, find interesting because it involves the practice of name dumping. That's something we're going to get to at some point in its own video, but for now, name dumping means just when Hasbro, or really any company whatsoever, throws a name they have trademarked onto a product coming out in order to secure it or renew it. In the US, you have to use trademarks within a specific time period after registering it, or else it expires. So, a lot of times, especially when Hasbro has names they really want to hold on to, they try and put it on everything they can, or at the very least, try to do one every 4 or 5 years just to make sure that they don't legally lose that name and other people start producing characters by that name. Today, we're talking about one in particular, the name Swerve. And you wouldn't think Swerve would be a name they'd really want to hold on to, considering the Generation 1 character was, let's be honest, barely a character before IDW 1.0 came around. Nevertheless, it is a particular point because for a while, Swerve was just a name that they absolutely had to keep a hold of and just kept popping up. So we're going to be talking about the toys that were named Swerve. Not necessarily like a character, for instance. So like we're not going to go into Shattered Glass Swerve. We're not going to go into animated Swerve, as brief as his existence is. We're going to focus on just the toy side of characters named Swerve because it gets really weird more than once. Okay, so follow me here on this little weird history lesson. So we start off with just Generation 1 Swerve, you know? Now, if you believe the original tech specs, he is a terrible driver and a terrible aim, which makes me wonder how he gets qualified to become an Autobot in the first place. He is a metallurgist, or a geologist, physical and chemical properties of metal, etc. That's where his skills lie. That's where he is valuable to the Autobot cause. He is not a great warrior and not great at following orders. At least that's the Generation 1 bio for him. If you look on the back of the box, that's what it says he is. If you're looking for the Generation 1 cartoon to give you some characterization for Swerve, let's see, how can I put this? He has as much characterization as a nail. And I literally mean that. The only existence he has in the cartoon is getting stomped by Trypticon until only his head is visible. He's a nail. That's as much as he got. So, of course, that's not the end of G1 Swerve. Fortunately, IDW came along and decided that he's actually kind of a character that could potentially be tapped as something a little bit more interesting. So, we have a much more outgoing, upbeat, enthusiastic Swerve who is always quick with a joke and always gets on people's nerves. His quick-wittedness, one, there's a layer to it because it is based in him trying to make up for a low self-esteem. But also, he runs a bar. Swerves, strangely enough. And yes, he is a far more entertaining and fleshed out character in the IDW comic books. I know there's people who don't like IDW's storytelling style, but I genuinely think Swerve is one of their biggest successes. And the fact that a modern toy came out based on his comic book appearance and his persona, I definitely think is a credit to what IDW accomplished with him. He's one of the examples of taking a past character, reimagining them to the point where that really is just the character, you know? He's kind of the de facto bartender in the Transformer universe now, even ahead of McAdam. Because McAdam only is such a obscure character in the original comics, and now only is prominent because of the Cyberverse cartoon. So, Swerve was definitely a success story. It's not the only toy that is derivative of Generation 1 Swerve. Alternator Swerve also was as well, though this is where we start getting a little bit weird. So the head sculpt on this toy was designed to be Swerve. The head crest is there, the visor is there. It's definitely a more more traditional shape and style for an Autobot, but it is absolutely based on that head. The designers, however, uh, did not know that there was like full colorization for Swerve. So when they saw that original head, all they saw was just this bright red faceless head like the original G1 toy had. They didn't know that the comic books and the cartoons kind of fleshed his design out. So they just made up their own. And he became red and gold with this red visor as well. And it's a completely different look for him. It's a cool look, but it definitely does not ring true to the original Swerve. Not to mention, it's not a truck anymore, is it? It's a Corvette. Slight change of pace there. We can go back to a truck, though. So, the Reveal the Shield, or Generations... God, there's a weird period in here where I can never keep all the lines straight because they kept changing things. Nevertheless, the Sergeant Cup mold, you know the generation I'm talking about, that was remolded for GDO, which was a Hasbro Asia exclusive release that eventually came over as a Toys R Us exclusive in America. These were just remolds into just basically random characters. And GDO itself is responsible for some of the strangest remolds we've ever gotten. Did you ever think we'd get a wheelie retooled from Jazz? Because we got it there. So this was the first time that he had become a truck again. You'll see the ones that he was throughout the 2000s. It's kind of a different story. But this is the one time he got turned into a truck again, with an alternate head that was pre-sculpted for the figure. This was around the time when Hasbro was sculpting 2 heads per mold. So in order to create the retool, all they have to do is gate off the original head in the mold and open the gate for the new head. Easy way of putting a retool in, right? The head itself, however, is a much more generic design. It's definitely not Swerve's G1 style head. And that's kind of what happened to a lot of toys in that era. The head was supposed to be generic, so it could be whoever. You know, we'll let the colors decide what character it actually is. So, it's kind of Swerve, it's kind of not, but hey, at least he became a truck again, right? Let's talk about the other figures that came in between, where being a truck was definitely not on the picture. This Swerve comes from Universe 1.0. It's an Armada Blur repaint, and to me, like, red and black is a hard color scheme to get wrong. Hey, I made a career out of it. Unfortunately, it's just a very bland color, and it kind of takes away from what makes Armada Blur special, that, like, switch in colors from robot to vehicle mode. This is just it ends up feeling really dull. You know, despite red and black looking good, it's just kind of dull, you know. There is next to no character for this story. There was a little bit of universe storyline where Unicron was using a virus to abduct people into minions to fight, you know, the children of Primus, and Swerve ended up being one of those who could resist it for a while, but eventually fell into Unicron's ranks. That's basically the only story that exists for him. So he's left to your imagination exactly what this Swerve is. And he's not the only one who is like that, by the way. Swerve basically started becoming just the name they put onto any kind of generic red car that they wanted to repaint into. And this repaint of Clocker comes from a completely different origin. Now, character-wise, he is very much the opposite of Clocker. He is rash, ill-tempered, violent. He competes in illegal underground oil racing. He constantly salvages parts from fallen cars on the track to re-augment his own. He's, storyline-wise, started as a very bulky bot, and then through what I believe is 16 iterations of remodeling himself, worked down into the design you see in order to become faster and faster. Very different take. You know, okay, so of course, definitely not Swerve, right? Definitely not G1 Swerve. It is strictly the fact that it's a red repaint of a car, so we're going to call it Swerve. And that just became a theme for a long, long time. The color scheme itself is actually based on an early design image of a character that the Cybertron's animation studio Gonzo created, and Hasbro liked it so much to the point that they decided, yeah, we will actually use that for a Clocker retool, or I guess just a Clocker repaint in this case. So there is a reason that this Swerve exists outside of just, we need a name for a red repaint. And there you go. That is Cybertron Swerve. We move on to Revenge of the Fallen Swerve, and we get back to the metallurgist part of his personality. This one is a fabricator. He's a metal worker. He also has bad driving, bad aim, just like G1 Swerve. On the other hand, this time it is because he has spent so many years over a smelter and so many years processing toxic chemicals. He's basically fried himself to the point where he can't drive good. He can't aim well. It's different. But once again, we needed to have a red sports car, so we're going to call it Swerve. And once again, that becomes the theme. His little spy changer, whoo, listen to me. His little Legends class figure, the little tiny one in Revenge of the Fallen, also got repainted into Swerve. And again, we're dealing with a head mold that really wasn't designed to be anybody, so they could basically repaint this mold however they want. It could have been a Decepticon for all they cared. You know, the head is just a head. As long as it looks different from Sideswipe, that's all they were really going for. But hey, more red cars as Swerve. Do we have anything else? We have another red car as Swerve. An even stranger one. And this has even stranger story. Like, every Swerve toy seems to have some crazy story to it. It's, like, you see why I wanted to talk about Swerve specifically? It gets weird. Aveo Swerve, and I'm probably pronouncing the name right because I'm not a car guy. I apologize to the car people if it's Aveo, whatever. You know the car I'm talking about. You know I don't mean it ill intention. But this was strange. Okay, so this was apparently paid for by Chevrolet. They wanted to have a mold that they could release as their own exclusive that Hasbro or Takara could never use in any other facet. So they paid for the molding themselves. It's part of like a goodwill thing for their cooperation during the live action movies. So the toy itself, this one had a lot. This one had a lot going for it. The original rumor was that in order to get a hold of one of these, you had to buy the actual Aveo Swerve or the Aveo car, and they would give you one of these as like a gift for getting it. That turned out to be mostly that for the one we know, that was false. That was never really verified. We can't really confirm that, and that might have only been a thing in China if it even did exist. Later on, in the European area, in the European region, you could order this off of GM's website. You could actually buy it, and for a couple days, if you were willing to pay anywhere between $50 and $100 to ship it over the Atlantic, like yeah, $100 shipping, and this was like 15 years ago or some crazy thing like that. Like this was a long time ago when gas wasn't as expensive as it is now, and they wanted $100 for shipping. So that lasted like 2 days, and then they shut the whole site down. When the website came back up, you couldn't find it anymore. So that was about the only official way of getting it for a long time. Later on, there were ways of getting it from Chevy in other facets. Taking a test drive in an Aveo Swerve could earn you one. Taking a survey, just like doing a test drive and taking a survey would give you like a list of gifts that you could get. Tote bags, you know, things like that. And just like, hey, here's our official Transformer that you can't get anywhere else. So that's how a lot of them ended up in collector hands. I think mine came from that situation, which I kind of regret selling it now. I don't have mine anymore because I forgot how crazy the origin of this toy was. So now I'm like kind of upset that I skipped out on that. Yeah, there's a contest promotion at mall displays. That's where entry form and survey came in. You could also, for a little bit, you could get one off of Big Bad for about 75 bucks. Apparently, a lot of excess stock from Hasbro ended up there. Even then, it kept popping up in really weird spots. And to this day, there's been no reuse of it whatsoever because that's the agreement Hasbro made with Chevy, and Chevy themselves have not chosen to reissue it. You would think at some point they'd retool it into like a modern Chevy car so they could do more of it, but no. So yeah, one of the most unique figure origins and one of the hardest and weirdest ones to get, And yeah, that is another legacy of Swerve. This name might be cursed. Let's talk about one more. So, Takara, the only place where you could get Breakdown for the longest time, decided to retool their Breakdown toy into an Autobot mold. And again, hey, it's Swerve. And to be fair, it's a truck, but it's an armored personnel carrier style truck, so it's a little bit of a cheat, but it's a little bit correct. And we do have like white color schemes on it, so at least we're trying a little bit here. So this one is another. It's a geologist that's bad at driving, essentially. But this one is much more of a daydreamer. And in the Arms Micron side of the story, he's one of the Transformers who discovered the Microns first, but opted to keep them a secret for as long as he could, which is what earned him the trust of his particular partner figure. So, again, we have a Swerve with very little story behind it, and to the untrained eye, this is just going to be just like a typical way of retooling a figure and ending up with, a notable character. So, what's weird about this one? Because at this point, they're all weird, right? Every Swerve is weird somehow. In this case, it is the head mold, which again is not particularly designed to look like Swerve. Kinda in a aligned universe, kind of twisted things around kind of way. However, what makes this weird is the fact that the head we saw before on a prototype shot of Ratchet that appeared in the instruction sheet for him. So the deluxe Ratchet had a head that looked exactly like the head that ended up on Swerve, whether it's not the exact same head, which is kind of explained why it looks so small on that body, or if they did upscale it so it actually worked inside the breakdown mold, not really sure. Nevertheless, the head was originally not meant for that toy, but sometimes that's just what happens. You got a leftover part here, we're going to use it there. Toy making. So even like the weirdest Swerve on here, who's like the biggest Swerve on here, still has something weird about him. So beyond that, IDW kind of made Swerve so much better known that they can't really name dump him anymore. It's been a while since we've seen a Swerve toy on the market, but he pretty much just tends to be a red and white truck from now on. That's just how well the IDW incarnation got him across to fans, so he's pretty much stuck there now. But as much as that gives us like a concrete idea of who Swerve is, it is kind of a lost thing, isn't it? Because this is fun. This is just so bizarre when you see just how many different ways Swerve exists and all the weirdness of all the characters and toys that end up being turned into Swerve at some point. So that is my history lesson for the day. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you learned something. There's a lot more to Transformers and their naming than just, we need to use this name. Sometimes there's weird coincidences to it. Sometimes they have entire massive backstories, way more interesting than their canonical storylines. It's worth looking into every now and then. Guys, I am facing the most powerful enemy any YouTuber can face, the algorithm, and I need your help to defeat him. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment. Every time you do, we attack that algorithm and we drive it back until it can no longer defeat this channel. Thank you very much.